Hey everybody, what's going on? My name is Galaxy. Welcome to the video. As you guys can probably tell, I'm sure you clicked on the video knowing what you were getting into. We're going over a Graveborn Spellshot build that is going to absolutely turn your gameplay upside down if you haven't been doing this or haven't seen it yet. So, before we jump into anything, I'm just going to show you guys a little demonstration here on the dummies. So we're going to hit the targets. So you can see our regular damage here is where we're hitting peak at 3,000 to 3,500, like on the best hits. But when we pop our spell here, this buffmiester, watch this. Bam, 30k, 51k, 60k. So about you know a 20 times difference in damage, give or take a little bit. And just in case you needed further proof that that was going to work on stuff that is not target dummies, there you go. We're on Chaos 20. Killed the chance in, I don't know, 10 seconds or so, I'd say. Now, I will be showing off some more boss fights later, but for now, let's go ahead and jump into the gear and show you guys how I'm able to pull all that off. So the main gun I'm going to recommend for this build for everybody is going to be the Ruby Spite. This is what it looks like. Now over here, it's got the 252 times 3, which is what's going to make this so good for us, and I will explain that more later. You guys will understand what I'm getting at. It also has this ability down here, crossbolts deal 3% increased damage for each crossbolt stuck on target, so it's going to really help us with the ramping. Now, if you get a Ruby Spite that rolls with, let me see, this. So I have a chaotic version of the Ruby Spite, but the ability is that targets take 3% increased melee damage for each crossbow stuck on the target, which is really unfortunate that my chaotic version rolled with that instead of this, so I went ahead and I'm using this one instead. Also, I have the enchantment on Spellcast, increase damage dealt by 15% for 10 seconds, which is going to be really good because we're going to be using spells pretty much constantly, so you'll have that overarching 15% damage buff almost all the time. Next up, I'm going to recommend getting a liquid cooling. Again, another important reason for that is that ×2 here and this gun's fire rate is just insane, and then I also have the on spellcast increase elemental damage by 20% for 5 seconds, which helps a little bit because it is a frost weapon, of course. And if you guys need to know where to get either of these weapons, I will be making videos on them later today, so I'll probably have cards up on the screen for you now, so if you need to know how to get one of those, feel free to just click on them and head over there and check that out. If you don't have either of these guns, the third option I'm going to recommend is getting an auto magic because it is a ×4, which again will all make sense in just a quick second, but due to the fire rate being a lot slower and the magazine size not being able to keep up as much, this one is going to be third on the list for priority. And then for your fourth slot, you can really use whatever you like. Try to get a gun with a times whatever multiplier, or just a really fast fire rate, maybe a big magazine, something like that. I have the Carver on just because I like the Gluttony on, just because I like the gun so much, but for this build it doesn't really hold up quite as well as it does on my other build. If you're looking for a build mainly based around this Gluttony or Dark Magic damage, I have that up on the channel as well. I posted that a few days ago. Feel free to go check it out. And as far as melee weapons go, with most of my builds, I like to use the Frying Pan just because of all the extra defense it adds. I like to go with damage and offense on my builds, so being able to just passively add some defense is always really good, so I like to use the Frying Pan. Next, the bread and butter of the build are going to be these two spells here. Now this one doesn't matter as much, and the buffmiester is going to be the really important one. Now we're able to use two spells because of our Spellshot action skill, the ambidextrous. I will get into the skill tree in a second to show you guys. But for now, I'll just show you that in this left slot here, we have the Ejected Barrel Maker. I just like to use this because the damage of it is so high. As you can see over there at the top, it says 2687. And now that's not the highest it can be. I'm on the hunt for a more damaging spell. You guys are going to want to get your hands on just any spell that has the highest damage in that slot possible. Now, don't be fooled by ones that say it'll say 380 times 10. Now don't get that confused. That's not quite going to work. You're going to want to get just the highest damage number you can without any multipliers. And then for the spell slot on the right, you're going to want to use a buffmiester. I'm using this one because it is dark magic damage, and of course we're half Graveborn, so we're going to get the most out of that. Now if you don't know, the buffmiester buffs almost everything, and when I pop it, here you see me running around. This is me shooting. Alright, now I'll reload here. I'll pop the buffmiester, then our movement speed increases, our fire rate drastically increases, the reload speed drastically increases. Now the important part of what the buffmiester does is that down there, the very first blue roll that it says increases direct damage dealt by 177. Now the effect of that is to take, and it'll add that much damage to each of your damage outputs whenever that is active. Now what we're doing is kind of a little bit of a cheesy thing to where instead of scaling off that 171, whenever we have the buffmiester active, that 171 is actually going to scale off this 2687 from the spell slot on the right, the main spell slot. going to go ahead and start Nautilus to show you guys kind of how this works. So as you can see, hardly doing anything. Swap the Buffmeister on. As you guys can see, the Ruby Spite shoots this slow shooting arc of three wide bolts. Let me go ahead and kill the Spore Troll with it. Pop this to get the kill off. Now, once we get that kill, the fire rate increases drastically and the bullets turn into homing. And again, it's a 3-run burst. Each one of them increasing the damage taken on the enemy by 3% for 5 seconds. So each time we shoot this and it auto targets and 3 bolts hit the enemy, they're taking a 9% increased damage each shot that we hit them with. So even if the damage doesn't start off ridiculous, which it most likely will, but it'll still ramp up drastically the longer we shoot it. Also, while we're here, I'll go ahead and explain that we want to get weapons with these ×3s and ×4s, because the buff that I was talking about from the Buffmeister and the Barrel Maker, that damage is going to apply to every bullet that we shoot. So if it's a ×3, every time you pull the trigger, all 3 of those rounds are getting that damage buff. So if we pop the Buffmeister and shoot a single fire weapon, every bullet is going to add that damage to the shot, which is pretty decent still by itself. But if you're using a weapon that has a ×2 or ×3 to the multiplier, then every single shot, each of the 3 will get that damage buff, doing 3 and 4 times damage per click instead of just the 1. The Buffmeister also works while you're down, so that's a plus. Now for my amulet, I like to use this one just because it increases dark magic damage by 30% and has a 26% gun reload speed on it. The gun reload speed is obviously helpful with reloading and stacking stacks of spell weaving, and then also, since we're using mainly the Ruby Spite, which is dark magic damage, it gives a 30% increase to dark magic damage. If you get a legendary with good rolls, I would recommend using that one over this, as they usually come with those additive effects, but a purple is plenty good as long as you get the rolls that you need on it. This one rolled with Clawbringer power, but the other ones are so good that I still go ahead and use this one. For the armor slot, I'm using an amalgam just because of the rolls that I got on it. I did like them. It got Graveborn and Spellshot power, as well as 10% fire rate, 30% critical hit chance, 15% all damage dealt, and 30% ability critical hit scores. Don't mind the melee damage, I don't really melee. It also rolled with +3 Warcaster, which is a kill skill that has a chance to instantly reload our weapons, and +2 Ascension, which increases our maximum health. So 2 kill skills that are going to be helpful. As long as you get some kind of class mod that increases Graveborn and Spellshot power, and then rolls with decent things like gun damage or fire rate, yeah, you're going to have a good time. Now for our ward, another staple that I've been using with my builds is the Trick Mirror, as it has a 75% chance to reflect bullets and arrows at attackers while the ward is not depleted. Now obviously that's good for the same reasons that I was talking about the Frying Pan being good, just helping with defense, since a lot of the other build is focused on offense. And I also have an enchantment that increases gun damage on spellcast for 10 seconds. Personally, I like to use this ring for help with boss fights. Now it has that spell critical hit damage, which isn't super important, but it has that 2.5% pistol critical hit damage, and then dealing damage to bosses increase effects by 100% for a moderate amount of time. So this just means that while I'm fighting bosses, I have a 25% pistol critical hit damage increase. Now this ring has 10% dark magic efficiency. I just wanted to throw a little bit of dark magic efficiency in there, just since our main weapons are dark magic and we're going to be getting health back from those. It'll increase that a little bit. That effect does get doubled when our health is less than 50% as well. If I had to say, the rings are the least important slots of really any build, since they don't roll with crazy effects like everything else. Just use whatever rings you have that have effects that will apply to the build. If you had fire rate or any kind of critical hit damage buff, I would go ahead and use those as well. Before we move on to skills though, I will just reiterate that the most important things for the build are getting a high damage spell for your left slot here, and then getting a dark magic buffmeister in this slot here. Get an amulet with a decent damage buff, and get yourself a Ruby Spite that has the 3% increased damage for each crossbow stuck in the target. The other stuff will help, all the things that I mentioned, but as long as you have those main components, this build will work for you. Next up are the skills. We're going to be going with Spellshot as our secondary, or Graveborn secondary if you're rocking Spellshot main. Either works. Then of course taking Ambihextrous, that way we can rock 2 spells. So we're going to be starting off in the Spellshot tree, trying to make it down to the bottom to get this last skill, rather than the Graveborn, as I feel Sever the Thread provides a better bonus than the Morhaim's Blessing. So the top row, I like to start off with 3 Magic Bullet, To add a little extra multiplier onto my gun damage, 3 points that it does equal 45% of bonus spell damage is applied to your gun. Then for the remaining 2 points to get down to the next row, I go ahead and take Spell Sniper to get critical hit chance over reload speed, as our reload speed is already kind of ridiculous, especially with the buffmiester. So the difference there is going to be pretty negligible, so we'll take 2 of Spell Sniper to get down. The next important one is going to be Font of Mana. We're going to take all 5 into that, so that way we can increase our spell cooldown rate. It also increases action skill cooldown rate, but since we don't have an action skill, it'll just affect our spell cooldown rate, but that's still plenty enough to take this one. Now after the 5 points in a Font of Mana, Glass Cannon will unlock, but personally I don't like to take this one, as whenever you take this, you also have to take this. If you would like to do that, feel free. It stops your ward from recharging, and then this skill allows you to recharge wards whenever you gain stacks of spellweaving. I don't like that, as a lot of times you get capped out and then can't use it anyway, so I skip those and just take 5 more points of just warming up, which increases fire rate for every stack of spell weaving at 4% per stack and 5 stacks. So 20% increased fire rate, which obviously is the same thing as 20% increased damage, give or take. Or if you take these 2 skills, you could just put 3 into this one. Then once we have 5 points into just warming up, I like to take 5 points into Imbued Weapon. Whenever the Fate Maker casts a spell, his guns deal bonus damage of that spell's element for a duration, and then it stacks once for each spell equipped. So this spell is the reason I recommend getting the Dark Magic damage Buffmeister, as every time we pop the Buffmeister, we're going to get bonus damage of Dark Magic dealt to our weapon. And since we're half Graveborn, you're going to see that we're going to be getting a decent amount of Dark Magic buffs as well from that tree. Then once you have those 5 points into there, this row will unlock. I take all of the skills available here. So 3 points into Double Knot, which is whenever the Fate Maker scores a critical hit with a spell, he deals bonus gun damage of his gun's element, again even further increasing the damage of Dark Magic that we're going to get from Imbued Weapon and already having Dark Magic damage buffs and using Dark Magic damage weapons. And for 1 point, we can get gun damage increases per stack of spell weaving. That's 4% per stack with 5 stacks, so again, we're pretty much always going to have that, and that's 20% gun damage right off the top. Then once you do that, you're going to need 1 more point to unlock the very bottom skill tree, so I went ahead and threw that into Warcaster, and what this does is add a chance for our guns to instantly reload whenever we get a kill. Not having to take time to reload is obviously a good thing, so 50% chance per kill on that, roughly. Lastly, we have Sever the Thread, where gun critical hits have a chance to instantly reset all spell cooldowns, which is obviously really good when we're rocking all spells and we're trying to keep our Buffmeister active constantly. So your critical hits will have a 15% chance to instantly reset the cooldown of the Buffmeister. Now, if you don't get that 15% chance to proc, you have a 5-second cooldown on that being able to happen again. So 15% chance every 5 seconds to instantly reset the cooldown, which is obviously really good for us. Now that we've hit the bottom of that tree, we can move over to the Graveborn. First thing I like to do is throw 5 points into Essence Drain, which increases our spell cooldown. So in the event that we don't get Sever the Thread to proc, we're going to need our spells to cool down as quickly as we can. This helps with that a lot. So every kill will increase our spell cooldown rate by 25% for 12 seconds. Then once you have those 5 points into there, Dark Pact will unlock, and throw 5 points into that because it will increase our Dark Magic damage just overall by another 20%. Once you have 5 points into that, the next row will unlock, and you can take 3 points into Dark Hydra. So what this is a kill skill that has a chance to summon a Dark Hydra companion dealing Dark Magic ability damage to nearby enemies. So it's another kill skill that can summon Dark Hydras, so these count as companions. So once we have these, I will go ahead and take 3 points into Faithful Thralls, which increases our damage dealt per companion. Right now we're at a 9% per companion, since we already have Demi-Lich, and we can get up to 3 Dark Magic Hydras, so that'll be 4, which will increase our damage by 36%. Once you throw 3 points into this, we should only have 2 points remaining. I put those into Mortal Vessel, just to increase our Dark Magic efficiency a little bit. I talked earlier about getting our health regen just a little higher, and increasing our maximum health overall. Also, you'll notice I have 2 points into Ascension, but that is from the class mod. We don't actually have any of our usable skill points accoladed to this. This is just another kill skill that will increase our health on kill. Next up, we have our hero points. Now, I personally have been going back and forth and trying different stuff out to kind of see how we feel with this. I think the number one thing to put points into is intelligence, of course. I've been maxing out intelligence to get that spell cooldown increased. In the event that our 15% chance doesn't proc and instantly reset our Buffmeister cooldown, we're going to want to get that back as fast as possible, so I max out intelligence to get that 30% spell cooldown. Now, this is the part at which I'm not sure really what to do. I'd been rocking status damage, but so much of our damage comes from the bonus of the Buffmeister that this almost seems pretty negligible at this point. Constitution is a really good one to go for. You can never really go wrong with max health and war, so I am going to fill that up as much as I can. Skill cooldown isn't going to really affect us at all, and like I said, Most of our damage is just straight from the gun and not status anyway, so this is incredibly negligible. Then I'm just going to spread the rest of my points throughout crit damage and crit chance. The higher crit chance we have, the more likely we are to reset our cooldown faster on our buffmiester. Now on to myth rank. Everybody's myth rank is going to be different. I have mine set up for other builds right now as well, so it's not going to be completely perfect for what we're rocking here. For the Blade Master tree, you can't really go wrong with dark magic damage for this build. Constitution would be a really good option for this as well, just further increasing our ward and our health. For the Deadeye tree, I'm honestly going to recommend doing just whatever you personally like with this one. You can't really go wrong with any of these options. I personally have magazine size. That's due to me liking having a higher magazine. Also, my Gluttony build runs off that a bit better. But feel free to just throw points into gun damage, fire rate, or your dexterity. For the Druid tree, I personally am pumping points into loot luck just to help with farming. Personally, that's what I'd recommend for the Druid tree as well. For the Archmage tree, intelligence will probably be your best option here. I have a lot of into status effect chance, again for my Gluttony build, but I would recommend putting points into intelligence here. And I'm going to wrap up the video doing what I said I would at the beginning, showing you guys some boss fights and just how this works with a bunch of different ones, a lot of the main bosses. As I'm sure you're seeing, it literally kills anybody. You can really fight any boss in the game with this, and as far as regular trash mobs go, they are literally a non-factor with this build. Now, I'm not sure if this will last or if it's supposed to be the way that it is, but for now, I suggest taking advantage of it and using it while it is part of the game. Make sure to drop a like on the video for me. It really helps out a lot, especially if you made it this far in the video. You must have enjoyed it at least somewhat. Be sure to subscribe for more content and builds coming out and update videos for this build and other builds that I have. Like I said, I have other builds. If you're looking for something else, you don't quite want to rock this one, I have other stuff on the channel. Make sure to go check it out. And with all that being said, I think that's it for me. I'll talk to you guys in another video. Peace out.